Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
While the Victorian era may be known for its dazzling rate of progress, it had its fair share of demons too. In this case, we're talking serial killers, female ones, to be exact. This batch of female serial killers were real vixens, a regular bunch of Medusas in corsets. Their crimes ranged from killing husbands and lovers, to killing other people's children. Hold on to your petticoats and trousers. It's going to be a hellish ride. Mary Ann Cotton. 1832 to 1873, the woman who became Britain's first convicted serial killer. Death count, 21. Mary Ann Cotton became Britain's first convicted serial killer after poisoning 21 people with her arsenic-filled teapot. Considered the most prolific British serial killer before Harold Shipman, the lives Cotton claimed included her mother, 8 of her own children, 7 stepchildren, her mother, 3 husbands, a lover and a friend. Described as strikingly beautiful at the time, she murdered her victims with arsenic poisoning apparently to collect their insurance policies. Arsenic poisoning caused gastric pain and a rapid decline of health, which was similar to many other common medical conditions in the 1800s and therefore undetectable. Sunderland-born Mary Ann is believed to have started killing after marrying her first husband William when she was 20 years old. While living in Plymouth, she and William had 5 children, 4 of whom died of gastric fever. The couple then moved back to the northeast where they had, and lost, 3 more children. In 1865 William, like his children, died of an intestinal disorder, leaving his widow with an insurance payout. Little over a year later, her second husband George Ward died again from intestinal problems with Cotton collecting a hefty sum of insurance. Cotton married her third husband, James, in 1866 and the deaths continued with Cotton's mother, a daughter, and 2 of James's own offspring passing away. Estranged from third husband James, she then bigamously married husband number 4, Frederick. The deaths again continued Frederick, their child, Frederick's sister, and Frederick's own child Charles Edward Cotton and Cotton's lover Joseph all passed away with stomach problems. Cotton's trial at Durham Crown Court lasted 3 days, and she was found guilty of Charles's murder and responsible for the deaths by poisoning of 11 of her children, 3 husbands, 1 lover, and her mother. She was hanged at Durham County Jail on March 24, 1873. Amelia Sock and Annie Walters 1873 to 1903, SACH, and 1869 to 1903, Walters. The Finchley baby farmers victim count, at least 12. Best friends Amelia Sock and Annie Walters were 2 British serial killers better known as the Finchley baby farmers who claimed the lives of at least 12 infants. Around 1900, the pair operated a lying-in home in East Finchley, North London, where babies could be left and adopted in exchange for payment. Their clients were mostly servants from local houses who had become pregnant and who had employers keen for the matter to be resolved discreetly. Sock and Walters charged new mothers for lying in and also for adoption of the baby after. But the pair would actually collect the baby after it was born and then fatally poison it with chlorodyne. Their landlord, who also happened to be a police officer, eventually caught the duo. During their trial at the Old Bailey, the quantity of baby clothes found at the lying-in home was used to indicate the scale of their crimes. It is believed they killed more than a dozen. The friends became the first women to be hanged at Holloway Prison, on February 3, 1903, in what was the only double hanging of women to be carried out in modern times. Amelia Dyer. 1837 to 1896. The nurse who strangled 300 babies. Victim count, 300. While largely forgotten today, Amelia Dyer is considered one of the worst serial killers in history and is believed to have murdered more than 300 babies. Some historians put her victim count at 400 infants. In Victorian-era England, the practice of baby farming, in which unwed women could pay people to take custody of their unwanted infant, became widespread. For more than 20 years, Dyer worked as a baby farmer and adopted hundreds of infants from unwed women across Bristol and Reading. She would accept a lump sum in exchange for her services, and instead of caring for the babies, Dyer would murder the child. Initially, she would let the baby die through neglect and starvation. But at some point in her criminal career, she decided to forego the expense and inconvenience of letting the infants die through malnutrition. Instead, soon after the receipt of the unwanted baby, Dyer would strangle them to death. In 1879, Dyer was caught after a doctor was suspicious about the number of child deaths he had been called to certify in her care. However, she was only sentenced to 6 months of hard labor for neglect, and, when she was released, she resumed her baby farming career. She released the folly of involving doctors to issue death certificates and began disposing of the bodies herself. However, Amelia's downfall came in 1896 when the bagged body of an infant was discovered in Thames at Reading. She was arrested on April 4, 1896 and tried for the murder of infant Doris Marmon. The jury took only 4.5 minutes to find her guilty, and Dyer was hanged on June 10, 1896. At the time of her death, a handful of murders were attributed to her, but there is little doubt she was responsible for hundreds of similar deaths. Following Dyer's case, British adoption laws were made stricter, giving local authorities the power to police baby farms in the hope of stamping out abuse. Constance Kent. 1844 to 1944. The teenage girl who killed her brother. Victim count, 1. A cause célèbre of the day, Constance Emily Kent was just 16 years old when she murdered her 4-year-old half-brother from her father's second marriage. On the night of June 29, 1860, Constance's little brother, Francis, disappeared from their home in Somerset. The next morning, the child's body was found in an outhouse with knife wounds in his chest and hands, and his throat slashed so deeply that the body was almost decapitated. Initially, a nursemaid was suspected of the murder, but she was soon released without charge. 5 years passed before Kent confessed to murdering her brother with a razor stolen from her father. Constance was sentenced to death, but this was changed to life imprisonment owing to her youth at the time of the murder. She served 20 years in various jails including Millbank Prison and then disappeared from records. In the 1970s it emerged that she had changed her name to Ruth Emily Kay, immigrated to Australia and became a nurse. She died there, aged 100, in 1944. Frances Lydia Alice Noor. 1868 to 1894. The baby farming murderess. Death count, at least 3. Born in London, 19-year-old Frances Lydia Alice Noor moved to Australia with her lover Edward Thompson while still married to her husband. However, her relationship with her lover was short-lived and Noor found herself penniless in Melbourne. She decided to set up a business as a baby farmer, accepting custody of an unwanted infant in exchange for payment. Dubbed the baby farming murderess, Noor would either sell these infants to childless couples or instead strangle them to death. After the discovery of the dead body of a baby girl in her garden, Noor was arrested and was charged with the murder of 2 further infants. Noor, 25, confessed to the murders just before she was executed by hanging at Old Melbourne Jail. Her death mask is still on display at the jail. Mary Piercy. 1866 to 1890. The serial killer who is the only female suspect for Jack the Ripper. Death count, 2. The only female suspect for Jack the Ripper, Mary Piercy, murdered her lover's wife, Phoebe Hogg, and Phoebe's 18-month-old baby. Piercy was 24 years old and living in Kentish Town, North London, by the time she started an affair with her married lover, Charles Creighton. On October 24, 1890, a policeman found the corpse of a woman in nearby Hampstead. Her skull had been crushed and her head had been almost severed, and nearby was a blood-stained pram. On the next day, the corpse of an 18-month-old baby was discovered and the two bodies were identified as Ms. Hogg and her child. The police searched Piercy's house, and found blood spatters on walls, ceiling, a skirt, an apron, and other articles, blood stains on a poker and a carving knife. She was charged with their murders and hanged on December 23. The case received an extraordinary amount of press attention at the time, and Mary was even suggested as a suspect in the Jack the Ripper slayings. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle even speculated that Jack the Ripper might have been a female. Kate Webster. 1849 to 1879. The Richmond murderess who killed her employer. Death count, 1. Kate Webster carried out one of the most notorious and savage murders in Victorian England when she killed and dismembered her employer Julia Martha in Richmond, southwest London, on March 2, 1879. The 30-year-old domestic servant then boiled Ms. Martha's flesh and threw the remains in the River Thames. There were even allegations that she offered her dead employer's fat to neighbors and local children to use as dripping or lard. A known petty criminal with a propensity for lying, Kate went on the run after the murder and even impersonated her dead employer for 2 weeks. Scotland Yard launched a nationwide manhunt for the Richmond murderess Kate, and she was eventually caught. Webster eventually confessed to the gruesome crime and she was hanged on July 29 in Wandsworth Prison. The murder had a considerable impact on Victorian England, and it heightened social tensions between employers and their domestic servants.
Audio Jungle.